When you want your spring break to feel like... and your kids' pool day to feel like... and your hotel bed to feel like... ooh, and room service to feel like... because at Hilton, hospitality feels like...
Your cabana's ready. Would you like fresh towels?
It matters where you stay. Book now at Hilton.com. Hilton, for the stay.
5 a.m. I'm up with a crisp Celsius energy drink. Running 12 miles today. Grab a green juice, quick change, and head to work. Meetings, workshops. One more Celsius, no slowing down. Working late, but obviously still meeting the girls for a little dancing. Celsius. Live, fit, go. Grab a cold, refreshing Celsius at your local retailer or locate now at Celsius.com.
Hold on to your butts.
We are changing the course of history as we see it. That is what Western demands.
Now this affects Iris. Iris, where are you?
What you feel only matters to you. I do not entertain hypotheticals. The world as it is vexing enough.
Iris, I have a tip for you.
Don't take drugs!
Or Whatever Movies with Wesley and Iris.
What up and welcome to Or Whatever Movies. I'm your co-host Iris and I'm here with my older brother
Wesley.
Today we're talking a movie from 2025, Netflix original documentary by Angus Wald, Being Eddie.
That dude won an Oscar, Angus Wall, and this is his feature film debut.
Feature documentary debut, but yeah, industry veteran, editor for David Fincher.
Yep.
Co-owner of Rock, Paper, Scissors. We cover documentaries every so often, including the Bee Gees doc.
How Can You Mend a Broken Heart? Michael J. Fox's Still.
Yep. We did that space one about the Apollo something.
The space one about the Apollo 11, dude.
Yeah, dude, that was riveting. All archival, super cool. My point being, we do this from time to time. And Being Eddie is very appropriate because I love Eddie Murphy. We grew up on Eddie Murphy. We've seen all of Eddie Murphy's stuff. He's the best.
Yeah, I think that's the point. There's documentaries every year. They're like, what happened in the dirt? Or behind the fences of Iwo Jima. And you're like, okay, what's this about? Like, what are we going to discuss? Oscar-nominated Navalny. And you're like, what's Navalny? And then there are the other documentaries, which are glimpses into something that we know and love so well that we just... Yeah, Andre the Giant. Maybe I wasn't a dedicated Andre the Giant fan as an adult, but I certainly was when I was a kid. And it turns out that for Eddie Murphy, I was a fan when I was a kid and an adult.
We've also covered a number of Eddie Murphy films. Most recently, Axel F., Coming to America.
And Beverly Hills Cop. Haven't done your favorite, though. Were You Crushed? When at no point in this documentary did Eddie Murphy mention The Golden Child.
I thought they were going there. They went briefly into Coming to America. That was around the same era, right?
It was around the same era, but with the distinction that The Golden Child didn't do as well. I thought he was really going to stick. This seems like Eddie Murphy glad-handing, and we're giving a lot of credit to him and his successes, but we're not really focusing on the failures. But then he does. He talks about Vampire in Brooklyn, which caused SNL to turn on him, or David Spade for that brief moment. And he talked about Norbit and Dreamgirls, which I guess he considers a failure because it was the first time he was really positioned for an Oscar win, and he won a Golden Globe, but he was disappointed not to win the Oscar. And he brought up Norbit, which was released around the time for awards consideration, figures that might have hurt him. So there are a number of Eddie Murphy misses, and we dwelt on those, but less.
Clarification, he wasn't bummed about losing the Oscar or losing to...
Was it Alan Arkin for Little White Little Miss Sunshine?
That's right. He was annoyed at being like out there in the tux and losing on camera and stuff like that. That's got, it's got to be a bit of a blow, but I feel like that clarification on his part was the microcosmic example of what Being Eddie as a documentary is. It's these kind of public image adjustments, Eddie Murphy, waxing philosophic and family is everything. And, I never did drugs or drank or smoked. And it's a very clean image of Eddie. And I guess that's another way of just saying it's kind of a puff piece.
And for that reason, I approached this documentary from what I thought was a different perspective, in that, well, maybe it's most people who are watching Being Eddie that hasn't seen all the movies like we have. And so when they would play sometimes extended clips to get to the appropriate runtime of like an hour 45 or whatever, it didn't impart anything new. So I watched Being Eddie when I was super sick and I was in bed and just like, I need something to watch. And I thought that's why it didn't really stick. And then I realized it was because I couldn't remember what this documentary imparted that was new to me. Remember we talked about Raiders of the Lost Ark and I went and saw Spielberg in a Q&A and he said all the same stories that I had heard in interview and in behind the scenes 1,000 times. So I don't really remember much about that Q&A. So for Being Eddie Murphy, I had seen all of these movies, and a clip is just a clip of a clip I've seen 1,000 times. What's new? It was the little interstitial stuff, the segues, the interview bits, certainly the OCD bits were new. His insights. But what this came down to was an assemblage of clips that could play on Instagram or YouTube or TikTok or whatever, that like, hey, Eddie Murphy alleges that Yul Brynner wanted him to sleep with his wife, which wasn't implied. It could have been as easily that Yul Brynner wanted to bone him. But just those little sound bites, I think there's maybe half a dozen that are revelations that make Being Eddie stand out, because otherwise it's just being awash with Eddie Murphy images that are familiar and funny.
So very little that was revelatory about it, especially for an Eddie Murphy fan. Yeah, it kind of was surface deep, because there are moments where he's reflective and he's sharing about his philosophy on life and fame and his career. And yet we don't go too deep. There's very little controversy. And either he is kind of as squeaky clean as he claims, or his publicity team has been on lock, because I can't really think of Eddie Murphy controversies that were glossed over, except for maybe, isn't he Scary Spice's baby daddy?
He is, but then he has 5 women that he had kids with for a total of 10 kids. So I don't know that she's particularly scandalous. The only thing that I can remember is he was accused of picking up a prostitute, and a transgender prostitute at that, which he laughed off and was like, I got in the news because I decided one day just to give somebody a ride, and that blew up and became headline news.
And not featured in Being Eddie whatsoever.
I mean, but as far as controversy goes, he's not in the tabloids. It seems like he's reclusive, but maybe he's just normal. And the reclusive concept is based on the perception of Eddie Murphy and being larger than life, to where he says when he was doing voiceover, it seems like he would just talk and make himself laugh and riff and all this stuff. But he said that doing Donkey, being at 100% for voice recording sessions, gave him a major headache. And it was on the basis of that performance that he said he doesn't actually like to work. He would rather, and I quote, be at home doing nothing. Which I found fascinating. It's the glimpses of the dude who we expect to be wild and crazy, but really we don't see anything about him in the news, except for his relationships, high-profile relationships, because it's publicized when he has another celebrity that he's hooking up with, or that there's, kids here and there. But he did say he was with his wife, this current wife, for 14 years. Has it been that long since the Spice Girl?
Apparently, but they only got married. But they only got married recently. So maybe that's why the marriage itself feels, or the relationship itself feels new.
So we're looking at nuance. We're getting little tiny bits of information parsed out through this relatively long documentary that were revelatory. So it seems like it's easy to talk about because those are the things that I perked up on and the things that I remember.
Is there any Eddie Murphy work that you're not familiar with that was featured in Being Eddie?
he talked about Saturday Night Live a lot. And I watched with Paul, I watched the best of Eddie Murphy Saturday Night Live on VHS over and over and over. To this day, we'll randomly quote those performances, and those were obviously highlights, but he was on SNL for quite a while. Lots of sketches that I've never seen. There were a couple of glimpses, but for the most part, they focused on the hits, and so much so that we talk about Eddie Murphy controversy, there were some skits that were on that VHS that are not appropriate now, that you can't find anywhere. And so I feel like I know bits of Eddie Murphy that maybe not everyone knows, because the thing where he's a reggae singer and he gets up on stage at like an elk club meeting and is talking about kill the white people, like that's not... Nobody's seen that. But really, I only know that one VHS of Eddie Murphy for Saturday Night Live, because by the time we came of age to be fans, he was already well into movies.
There are the unspoken aspects of being Eddie that were revelatory beyond, let's say, the content itself. He comes across as so confident, and yet I found it surprising that he himself is the primary narrator for his own fame. He's the one that talks about his impact in the industry. He's the one that talks about the doors that he opened up for other entertainers. He is not shy about that. I think dare I say, he has a healthy image of the impact that he's made with his work and his career. And also, he's not reserved about or shy about sharing what he's achieved and showing off his beautiful home and his beautiful family, which maybe he deserves in every way.
You know, I struck on the same thing. Eddie Murphy deserves to be where he is, to putter around, to watch Seinfeld and go to bed, to be family focused, for his 10 kids to come around and like hang out with his friends from the old days and stuff who's left, but he deserves... I have an issue with artists who are amazing at a thing and then are just like, yeah, I'm not going to do that stuff though. It's so frustrating when you see really talented people who only surface, once a decade, or did put out one album or did a great performance, and like, whatever happened to that person? That's crazy frustrating. Eddie Murphy, I'm okay with him in his older age kind of focusing. He's fallen back, if you'll notice, into more supporting roles. I think he got burned a little bit. When a movie of his fails, it's all on Eddie Murphy. The big Eddie Murphy movie failed. But we have the Heist movie with what's his name and the Pete Davidson and what was it called? Was it called The Heist? The Big Heist or whatever, and Dreamgirls, and
Dolomite Is My Name we covered, You People we covered.
For sure, an assembly piece, Dolomite Is My Name, but probably Eddie Murphy in his most central role in a while. It seems like he's taken slightly smaller roles that big stars are allowed to do when they don't have to bear the burden of carrying an entire movie on their shoulders. But also, he is kind of alone. Like, who are his contemporaries that are talking him up? Maybe Arsenio Hall, who seems to have been around, for 40 years since the beginning. But everybody's gone. His friends are gone. Rick James, Michael Jackson. Charlie Murphy is gone.
What happened to Charlie?
He died of leukemia. It's already been about 8 years. And his mom, there was an Entertainment Tonight interview with Lillian Murphy, his mom. Well, I actually don't know if that was her name because she remarried, but those interviews were old, and that was something kind of telling about this documentary where we can is it cheating, do you think, to use documentary sources totally out of context? We're not talking about being Eddie. This is from another thing, because all the Charlie Murphy movies interviews were long before this movie, and that mom interview was from like 25 years ago.
Yeah.
She died in 2000.
It surprised me that Charlie was dead because he was such a big part of the documentary. I didn't realize that the Charlie Murphy interviews were archival. They felt current. It seemed like they had a thriving relationship, and I was surprised when he revealed that he was gone. But, Eddie Murphy he's like mid-60s, and not totally unnatural for him to have lost people.
But it seems like the people who spoke on his behalf now, his contemporaries, were fans. Pete Davidson, Jamie Foxx, even Dave Chappelle, who didn't meet him until The Nutty Professor, which I'm realizing now was a long time ago.
Yeah, dude.
Doesn't feel like a long time.
20
Man, I'm
years
old.
ago.
But Pete Davidson, who didn't know him, who was in this heist movie with him, talked about going to the video store and seeing him for the first time. Oh, what is this? On DVD, where he like played it on the DVD players in his mom's car.
Right.
And that's like such like a later stage. I've been an Eddie Murphy fan, I think since Pete Davidson, before he was born. It seems strange to me.
Yeah, but isn't that intended to show his impact? That he paved the way, opened the doors, and inspired all of these great creators? That seems to be the thrust of the Eddie Murphy Being Eddie documentary.
And there's something too, Eddie Murphy started, it was successful at so young. He started on SNL in 1980. So he was maybe 18. So much success at such a young age.
I liked that he said that SNL was like Harvard for comedians, that was his education, that he came up through the show and in the public eye and prepared him to step basically right into a leading actor role. He didn't have to work his way up in films or make that transition. He was already Eddie Murphy when he did 48 Hours.
As Dave Chappelle said, Eddie Murphy is plug and play. I think the most succinct thing about Being Eddie for me is it's true. He's so instantly likable and so compelling to watch that he can just step into a movie and now he's a movie star, where he doesn't consider himself a comedian or an actor or a musician. He's just an artist who puts out stuff, and a lot of it is successful, some of it not.
Picture this: a curve in the road, a change in plans. Well, what do you say? With the all-new Audi Q3, the answer's always yes. Yes to adventure. Yes to escape. Yes to performance. Yes to comfort. Yes to right now. Because saying yes without hesitation, that's real luxury. The all-new Audi Q3, made for the yes life.
This episode is brought to you by Peloton. Step up your sweat with the Peloton Cross Training Tread Plus. Swivel your screen 360 degrees and follow your favorite instructors on and off your tread. Track your form and reps with the movement tracking camera. Feel supported as you train on the cushioned slap belt. And move to the beat with Sound by Sonos. Elevate your workouts with the Cross Training Tread Plus.
What would you say is Eddie Murphy's greatest impact on your life?
Oh, absolutely the early 80s stuff. Probably Beverly Hills Cop. It's the movie. I always have a thing with actors or performers or whatever that's the defining moment. And usually it's my favorite, or maybe not even their best performance. And everything before that, they look like babies, and everything after that, they look kind of old. It's Beverly Hills Cop for me when he was like 21 or something.
And what did Beverly Hills Cop do for you?
It was my connection with Dad. Dad showed me that movie. He really liked it. Detroit is not that far from Chicago, where Dad grew up. I don't know if that was his lifestyle. But it was fun and comedic and also adult. And he made, it was kind of raunchy, and it was R-rated comedy, but also action adventure. It seemed like a perfect movie actually, it was probably super inappropriate, but it was a perfect movie for me at that time that I watched 1,000,001 times.
He was definitely cool guy, which was Dad's vibe. Like, that was definitely what Dad admired. I loved what one of the subjects said. I think it was Chris Rock, about when Eddie Murphy disarms the bad guy in the strip club in Beverly Hills Cop. And he's just like, he was badass action hero. And minutes before, he was cracking you up. And then they cut to Eddie Murphy giving the okay sign with his signature goofy smile.
Yep.
And he was right. That was Eddie Murphy in a nutshell. Cool guy, funny guy, action star, and which is kind of like this great cocktail for heartthrob.
An effortless transition between voices, characters, and from action to comedy. He seems to be the total package, because Seinfeld talked about comedians generally being ugly. And then Eddie Murphy comes along and is thrilling people. And who was it? Tracy Ellen Ross said that the leather outfit from Delirious was horrible, and that's what made it so great.
Yeah. His stylist was a prominent subject in this documentary, and she had a lot to say about how he presented himself. And that the leather in particular was somehow horrible and just irresistibly alluring.
Yeah, definitely memorable. I did think it was kind of silly looking, but you definitely remember those two outfits.
Oh, for sure. In talking about revelatory moments, it was revealing when he debunked this idea that people have that he was laughing at himself when he laughs at the two guys in leather on the streets of Beverly Hills.
Yeah, I didn't really get that. Well, I thought it was just funny that two dudes would dress like different eras of Michael Jackson or like flip sides of a Michael Jackson coin. I just thought it was funny, like, those guys just dressed up like Michael Jackson. I think I did see Beverly Hills Cop first, though, before I saw Raw or Delirious.
Oh, really? Did we?
I don't really know. It's all a blur. But it was cool that he talked about the guy made a funny face, and that's such a memorable moment, 45 years later. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, people wanted to find deeper meaning in it. It was a commentary on Eddie Murphy himself, and he has the ability to laugh at himself. Or I guess like you, I read it more as it was very in character for the Axel Foley character to laugh at the ridiculousness of Beverly Hills fashion, with his gritty Detroit roots and stuff. But there was definitely an element of awareness that, you have to bring to that. It would make sense that you saw Delirious first, then Beverly Hills Cop.
No, I think I saw Beverly Hills Cop, then Raw, then Delirious later.
I associate Delirious and Raw with Night of the Living Dead, Gulliver's Travels. What other movies do we have on loop on VHS?
Those two have never been connected ever once, ever.
These are the movies that we watched over and over and over again. I cannot think my career as a consumer, if I can call it that, starts with those VHS tapes. These are like my earliest entertainment consuming memories, and it laid the foundation for who I am as a person who watches and enjoys entertainment. I think it's the genesis of my 18-year-old boy humor. It's the reason that I love stupid movies like The Hangover. He basically set the tone for everything that I like, Eddie Murphy.
What's crazy is I put Gulliver's Travels away in some room, and I remember nothing about it until you brought it up.
Really?
What? I have no I'm searching my memory banks, and I have no visual reference for Gulliver's Travels at all. Now I have to go watch Gulliver's Travels.
We watched Gulliver's Travels like 100 million times.
I know. So, do you think that there are people who sat down in the late 90s and watched The Nutty Professor and did not know that it was Eddie Murphy's all around the table except for Hercules?
There was someone who said, well, he talked about the barbershop scene in Coming to America and how he was given all of these opportunities to these black character actors. And I was like, really?
Such a happy moment for me, because I cannot remember not knowing that was Eddie Murphy as all the Clumps, or Eddie Murphy and Arsenio Hall and one other guy and Cuba Gooding Jr. in the barbershop in Coming to America. The fact that Reverend Jesse Jackson thanked him for giving an opportunity to multiple old dudes I was overjoyed at that revelation, because I cannot remember that time. He's so pervasive that it all blends together when I saw what, and I don't remember a time where I was like, oh, that's not Eddie Murphy. And that says nothing about performance or accuracy or pitch perfectness as the old Jewish guy. It just is what it is. It blends with my adult sensibilities because I cannot remember the awe and wonder of what those were as a pure art expression.
I think that's the point. That's the point that Eddie Murphy is trying to make. He has this ease about assuming that everyone knows who he is, what he does, what he's capable of, and it's not undeserved. But the point of the anecdote is that it surprised him, and it should surprise us, that he could fool anybody, because we know who Eddie Murphy is and what he's capable of.
What's strange to me is that he finally went back to SNL, and he spoke and talked earnestly about his time there, where he started, but he wasn't funny. And he didn't go back for a long time because of the whole thing. But this was the point of being Eddie. It was showing him full circle, kind of embracing his failures, his successes, and letting go of what he perceived to be super important at the time. He's letting go of the big things like Harlem Nights, which he directed and ended up being a failure. What's interesting about the Eddie persona, where he tells Letterman that I've never been myself on film, is that Eddie Murphy as a person talks about being funny, and never when he's not performing is he funny.
Yeah.
The Eddie Murphy when he's not on is not funny. I was really happy when he could seamlessly go back into his Richard Pryor voice, his Bill Cosby voice, and go back into the voices that made me smile because it was so warm. But when Eddie is talking about himself and he's doing that laugh that's so distinctly not the Eddie Murphy laugh, that he forces himself not to be OCD or to make those little stimming noises, or to check the gas or whatever.
Compulsively check the oven.
Yeah. He's not funny. I'm trying to wrap my head around it. Like, he laughs at his own jokes. What comedian laughs at their own jokes in the wrong laugh? That was a surreal revelation to me.
And he does it so consistently. It must be real or practiced, because as sincere as he appears to be, he punctuates almost everything he says with a laugh. And I'm not
the wrong laugh.
And the wrong laugh at that. I didn't take much more away from it though than the fact that he just has a levity about who he is, which I hope comes from what he claims is loving himself and accepting himself. At the end of the day, he knows who he is and he loves that person. I can't think of, I guess, a greater accomplishment for someone who's at risk of such a distorted self-image. He seemed pretty grounded for a person who was excessively famous. I mean, probably one of the most famous people in the world, and a hugely influential person for me personally. And if rando me is impacted by Eddie Murphy, I can't imagine how he's touched the lives of the public.
Yeah, is it drugs? I mean, Whitney Houston died from drugs. Michael Jackson, albeit inadvertently, not exactly his hand, still had a lot of painkillers and sedatives and stuff going on. He technically died of a drug overdose. Prince died very young, and maybe drugs were involved. I was kind of surprised to hear that he was pretty much a teetotaler, and that gives me hope for teetotalers of the world, like myself, give or take. And I wonder if it was just when you do things in excess, when fame and this whirlwind of attention and all this scrutiny and speculation about you and all this intense media pressure, then you turn to the things that make it easier, and those things kill you? Is that a fair, logical progression?
It was definitely a revelation that the biggest star of the 80s didn't do cocaine. That there's something going on there. But good for him. And I think that maybe he lost enough people to drugs that he, swore it off. But do you know why you are a teetotaler?
I was sober and didn't do drugs because mom and dad kind of did. Maybe not hard stuff. Eddie Murphy admittedly is more of a weed totaler. So mom and dad, I wasn't really interested in it. And then when I got old enough to drink, I was like, this kind of sucks because booze just makes me sweat and I don't like the in-between. I go right from sober to drunk, and the drunk is a terrible feeling. Probably because I'm obsessive and don't like the feel of losing control. I don't ever want to be in a position where someone has to drive me home or direct me stumbling to my bed,
Yeah.
It's not a moral thing. I just, maybe like Eddie Murphy said, he just wasn't interested and couldn't hang.
We seem to be in agreement that there were some revelations in being Eddie, and for me, it was a nice walk down memory lane. Maybe for you, it was a little bit more like a clip compilation that you could watch on any day that doesn't need to be kind of crafted like this. But I think we can also agree that it's, it stays on somewhat a surface level, and it doesn't seem like the featured reviews on IMDb disagree. 6 stars, what makes him Eddie, I still don't know.
Yeah. He said, this'll give you a glimpse of the real me. And really, that's what it boils down to. I got a glimpse, but it was the controlled surface level like a fan meet and greet for Eddie Murphy. If you ask him a personal question, he'll probably answer, but he's not volunteering everything.
That's what they should have called it, being Eddie Murphy, the meet and greet.
Yep.
Because he is 7 stars honest, but not to the point of exposing himself kind of unnecessarily, which is probably how he's handled a lot of his fame.
And that's fine. For how much Eddie Murphy has put himself out there, how much he's risked, how hard he's worked. Pete Davidson talked about there's a reason people don't do the crazy makeup. He did it like times 6 in single movies.
Yeah.
Repeatedly.
4 hours in the chair.
Bowfinger, Nutty Professor, Coming to America, anything like that. This isn't showing up in a hoodie and doing Shrek and getting a headache. That's months and months of intense makeup for multiple characters. Remember, I talked about with the Devaney twins about how ridiculous it was and how miserable Bill Skarsgård must have been in the Nosferatu makeup.
Right.
Eddie Murphy was Sherman Klump when that kind of prosthetic makeup was in its relative infancy. Like they didn't have the cooling water tubes running through the heavy prosthetics and stuff to make it work. He must have been miserable. And for a dude who doesn't like to work and gets a headache from voiceover work, that might have been kind of a lot.
Right. When we talked about programming and what we should record next, we discussed a number of movies, including Being Eddie, and I jumped at it because I knew it would be easy. There's nothing chore-like or work-like about watching Being Eddie. I knew that I would enjoy it because I enjoy Eddie Murphy and I enjoy his work. And it being a puff piece kind of fit into that. You know, I wasn't looking for controversy and expose. I wanted a fun, light look at Eddie Murphy, and that's exactly what I got. So in terms of the promise of the movie, the documentary Being Eddie, I think Netflix and Ingersoll hit their mark. But will it be kind of just as memorable as Gulliver's Travels?
Not even a softball. It was more like a koosh ball that was warmed up in the microwave and tossed underhand to us in a way that of course we're going to catch it. And of course we're going to enjoy the nostalgia and the feels to just hang out with Eddie Murphy for an hour 45.
Yep. So perfect movie to watch when you're sick and you need something easy. Then there's Being Eddie.
What Eddie Murphy movie are you going to watch right after we hit stop on the recorder?
Golden Child. Okay. Or maybe I'll put Raw on the background.
All right. Look for our forthcoming discussion on both at orwhatevermovies.com or wherever you get podcasts, which, by the way, is where you can also find Powers of Darkness.
Yeah. Speaking of documentaries, albeit a podcast, 818-835-0473 is how you get in touch with us, or whatevermovies@gmail.com. Thank you for listening to our discussion on Being Eddie, and check out all the other movies we referenced at orwhatevermovies.com or wherever you get podcasts. And thanks for listening.
At Blinds.com, it's not just about window treatments. It's about you, your style, your space, your way. Whether you DIY or want the pros to handle it all, you'll have the confidence of knowing it's done right. From free expert design help to our 100% satisfaction guarantee, everything we do is made to fit your life and your windows. Because at Blinds.com, the only thing we treat better than windows is you. Visit Blinds.com now for up to 45% off site-wide, plus a professional measure at no cost. Rules and restrictions apply.
Welcome to another season of Crypto with Kamal on Electricast. Where we explore the future of money and how digital assets are reshaping our world. I'm your host, Kamal Hubbard. Web3 is not just a buzzword, it's a movement that empowers you, your family, and community. So if you're passionate about financial technology or just want to stay ahead of the curve, make sure to tune in and subscribe to Crypto with Kamal wherever you find your favorite podcasts.
Electricast.